Hey guys, this is Whyt Manga, the creator of the Apple Black Manga series. There's a link to read this if you haven't already. Somewhat acclaimed by most of those who have read it, so I'd like to thank people for the good feedback. And I'm gonna keep it up. Here I am inking a background for the manga. This is in chapter 3, and I just want to show you guys my process and show you how I go about inking backgrounds. Uh, you can say that this is a background tutorial, but not really. I'm gonna have a background tutorial like this, but from scratch in the future, where that can really be called a tutorial. Here, I'm just gonna go take you guys a little bit through my thought process, even though the actual tutorial will do that probably a whole lot better. But I just wanted to show you guys, how I go about it, what I use, where my mind is, what I'm thinking about, and just generally things like that. This is, like I said, drawing a show, I can say manga background where it's not too detailed. It's not like a realistic background. You could say it's realistic, with the lines and part of the architecture and stuff like that. But it's shonen. It's manga in the sense that it's not. It's not supposed to look exact like realistic in this. Look real basically. It's manga. Black, white, and grayscale, that kind of stuff. When doing backgrounds, things you need to take note of are things like perspective. Now, perspective is not something that you can learn real quick, so it doesn't matter what background tutorial you're watching. It's not like you're going to be able to do backgrounds, like a pro after watching one video. These things take time, and it takes a lot of practice as well. Sorry guys, I think I have a little cold this winter. It's pretty bad. So I'm just gonna give a couple tips. Coming up with backgrounds like this, something to keep in mind would be to there are actually two ways. There are actually plenty of ways to go about this. There isn't one particular way to draw a background. Sometimes you can actually just draw a background straight up in a computer, whether it's Photoshop or Manga Studio or whatever you want to use. How I go about it is I tend to draw the background first, sketch it up, and then I the people and the bubbles or the word text balloons, and then I ink behind that. Here I'm inking over it, but I'm gonna fix that in Manga Studio, so you're not gonna notice the difference anyway. So I'm just here to focus on the background itself. Sometimes people may draw and ink the characters and leave the backgrounds for their assistants if they have assistants, and that's how most of it is done in Japan, where they have assistants who take care of the backgrounds, and the main artist kind of gives them instructions and approves or disapproves certain things, and that's how backgrounds get done. And that they have it's easier for them to pull off 20 pages in a week when they have backgrounds. I'm not saying it's impossible, but at least it's easier when you have assistants but you have to pay them. Someone like me who doesn't really have that much money, can't really afford. And either way, I don't really want to use assistants that much, because the kind of backgrounds that I make are backgrounds that are made up and themed. So that's another thing you have to keep in mind, is that these backgrounds are made up. These are all from my head. What would help you come up with backgrounds like this, or maybe better, is to study other backgrounds and do research, not to copy them exactly, but take out things that work, things that make sense, things that have been used, not necessarily used before. I mean, a roof has been used before, but it's still original. So you come up with your own designs and stuff like that, inspired from you know things of that nature. For instance, if you were making like a manga that's set in ancient times, where we had knights and jolts and King Arthur kind of stuff, you might want to go back, maybe use Google Images if you can, and do some research on that kind of backgrounds and the things that elements of the architecture that are done or used more than once. Things that make it things that give it that medieval feel. So that's one way to go about it, and that's basically using reference. But when coming up with original backgrounds like what I'm doing here for my manga Appleblack, it's really having a theme and sometimes having to design the background separately. It's almost like designing a character. So you have to separately design, maybe sketch it up in your sketchbook, design the background elsewhere and know where things are. So kind of it'll help. It's not necessary, but it will help to be able to almost feel like you're there yourself and you know how everything looks. That way, when you're coming up with the background, it's easier to pull things off. And you have to be consistent with it, and not just in one particular room, but in that world. At least maybe in a depending on the story, but in that maybe that country has a certain aesthetic to their backgrounds. You want to keep that theme and be consistent with it. I think it always helps, and it allows the reader feel more like they've come into this world. The tools I use the G Pen and Sakura Microns to ink this. I use the microns to draw anything that requires straight lines. So obviously I use a ruler, and I also use French curves. Um, you can see, you probably watching this video, you would have seen me use the microns a lot, and I normally use the 005 or the 01 to draw the backgrounds, and anything that feels a little organic, things that feel more original if I draw them freehand. I do that also with the micron, or I may use the G Pen for that, especially if it's closer to the screen. And then, I scan in and tone in Manga Studio. For more tutorials on scanning in, toning, and inking, and things of that nature, I have other videos that touch on those, and you can find that on my channel. So yeah, that's basically it. Things to keep in mind is to have some form of shading. And most times when I'm shading, this style is very popular in shonen mangas when you shade with like straight lines. So you're using the ruler to shade, and it gives the background, the walls and things like that, some kind of texture, whether it's is worn out or whatever. Sometimes you can add cracks, but you have to be careful. You can't add cracks to everything, especially if it's like a rich neighborhood and things like that. So you have to be careful when you're doing stuff like that. You can't have too many cracks unless it's a really dirty, gritty place. Like I said, there isn't one way to go about backgrounds. There are a million ways, and this is just one background, one take at it. Like I said, I'll have a more detailed background tutorial suitable to teach how to draw backgrounds, and I'll have more. Like I said, you can't just watch one and be an expert at backgrounds. This takes time and practice. I could even if I showed you my early backgrounds, you laugh. So over the years, I have improved. So this background is done, and here are other backgrounds that I've done in the past that show that how I put this. Basically, when my tutorial comes out and I post out more tutorials, you'll probably be able to pull off backgrounds like this, or even better. Now, this is just one way to go about backgrounds. It's a very manga styled kind of background. I'm gonna have more, more backgrounds that might deal with color and things of that nature. Just something different from manga. But for now, I'll be focusing on manga. Things to look out for on this channel. Like I said, the tutorial on backgrounds, but more tutorials on, fighting scenes, action scenes, camera poses, anatomy, you know, the male, female anatomy, fat guy anatomy, aliens, blah blah blah. So y'all can leave comments on what you want to see next. I'll be working on the background tutorial and maybe some fight scenes tutorial, you know, action poses and stuff like that. Things to come on this channel as well will be to be a how to write. Not a how to write, not like I'm an expert writer, just like most of you. I'm learning, I'm improving as well, but I know I have a couple tips to give out. Um, so we have tutorials on, you know, how to come up, not how to come up with a shonen manga, but how to make, take an idea and just make it a little better, and how to make shonen manga basically. And it's gonna be like a series. It's gonna have its own playlist, and I'm gonna have a lot to talk about. You know, the talk about the villains, romance, premise, you know, how the writing is done, you know, how to make things better, tear jerkers, the character development, villains, heroes, female characters, cliches, you know, how the action should be portrayed, or, you know, at least ideas. Like I said, there isn't just one way to do things. It's more like a but I'm sure that you can take it and have certain spins on it, and, you know, make it yours. And overpowered characters, background development, power-ups, pacings, dialogue, you know, the shonen themes, the, you know, themes about hard work, friendship, victory, you know, themes like that, power-ups, the, you know, usual plots, research, gags, comedy, etc. So I'm gonna touch on those. I'm gonna have a contest coming up soon to celebrate the 2,000 subscriber thing coming up. I'm about to hit 2,000, so I'd like to thank you guys for that. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please like, favorite it, and comment for support basically. And if you're looking forward to any of the upcoming videos, please subscribe. This is Whyt Manga, and we're done with this tutorial. We good? We good.